Have you ever seen a small, trembling life begging to survive, right beside a trash bin? I have. And even now, every time I remember it, my heart clenches as if someone is squeezing it tight. It wasn't a scene from a movie, nor a made-up story designed to draw tears. It was real. That morning, I turned down a narrow alley behind the brick housing blocks, just as the garbage truck pulled away. And then I heard it, the faintest sound a person could hear, a raspy whimper, broken, like the last breath of something about to die. There, in the damp shadow of a stained brick wall, surrounded by the sour stench of trash, a Doberman puppy, barely a month old, pressed itself into a corner. Its whole body shook in waves, as if the world itself had already declared it unworthy of life. I dropped to my knees, my heart pounding, and then its eyes found mine, wide, cloudy with fear, yet still flickering with a desperate plea to be saved. Its tiny front paw bled, skin cracked and eaten with infection. I saw streaks of blood soaking into the cement, like a silent indictment no one would read. In that moment, I knew that if I walked away, she would die. Not tomorrow, not by afternoon, but right there, in the cold of that morning, amid the smell of garbage and the fading rumble of a truck. I froze for a few seconds, then pulled the old flannel from my shoulders and laid it on the damp ground. I didn't rush. I only whispered, "It's all right, little one. Daddy's here now. No one will hurt you anymore." She still trembled, eyes wide with caution. But when the cloth, carrying the familiar scent of a human, slid closer, she slowly lowered her head and pressed her cheek against it, as if too drained to resist. I lifted her up, and in my arms, she felt light as a breath, fragile enough to be carried away by the next strong wind. When I brought her home, my wife raised her hand to her mouth the moment she saw. Her voice broke. "Oh my God, her leg." We said nothing more. We just set to work. That night we bathed her 3 times. The first time the water turned thick, brown with dirt. The second, streaks of red as blood seeped out. By the third, the water ran clear, and at last I saw the shivering body beneath. A tiny frame so frail it seemed it could break just by being set down. The stench clung to my shirt, but beneath the filth, I saw what no odor could hide. A heart still beating, weak yet stubbornly clinging to life. I laid her on a dry towel and sat down beside her. She looked at me, eyes half closed, as if still unsure that a hand could exist without striking or pushing her away. I reached out, placed my hand gently on her head. She flinched, then, unexpectedly, didn't pull back. In that moment, I heard the faintest sigh, like she had just released a part of the fear she'd carried since the day she was born. I turned to my wife, my voice rough. "Let's call her Alpha. Because from today, she starts again from the beginning." That night, I couldn't sleep. Alpha's fragile breathing filled the room, each faint rise and fall like a question. "Daddy, am I really allowed to stay?" I placed my hand on her chest, feeling the tiny but defiant rhythm of her heart. And I knew then our fates were bound together from this moment on. Nothing could ever tear them apart. The next morning, pale sunlight slipped through the curtains. I had just stepped onto the porch when I heard a faint whimper. Alpha was trying to stand, but the moment she placed her front paw on the wooden floor, she collapsed. I rushed over. Lifting her, I saw that tiny paw swollen to twice its size, dark red and oozing yellow fluid. The wound wasn't just bleeding. It carried the sharp stench of infection. My voice cracked. "Oh God, how long has she endured this?" My wife stood beside me, hand over her mouth, tears blurring her eyes. She touched Alpha's head with trembling fingers, then turned to me. "We can't wait any longer." "We have to take her now." We wrapped Alpha in a clean towel and placed her in the wicker basket my wife usually carried to the market. Alpha didn't resist. She just lay there, wide brown eyes open, too weak to bark or struggle. Each time the car jolted over a pothole, she whimpered, then went limp again. I bit down hard, my hands clenching the steering wheel. In the rearview mirror, I caught my wife's gaze, fearful, pleading, praying all at once. At the clinic, I nearly burst through the door. The young nurse at the desk looked into the basket, her eyes widening in shock. She called for the doctor immediately. Within minutes, Alpha was rushed into emergency care. My wife and I sat outside, my heart pounding so violently it felt ready to tear from my chest. I heard the click of a pen, the rustle of paperwork from inside. Then the door swung open, and a middle-aged man with graying hair stepped out. Dr. Miller, a name I'd heard many times in our neighborhood. He held up a freshly printed X-ray and looked at me over silver-rimmed glasses. "Her paw. It's not just infection," he said, voice low and steady. "The bone in her front leg is broken. A bad fracture. Without immediate surgery, Alpha will never walk normally again, and the infection could spread quickly, threatening her life." The blood drained from me. My wife squeezed my hand until it went numb. I swallowed hard, forcing out the question I feared most. "Does she have a chance?" Dr. Miller met my eyes, then nodded slowly. "Yes, but a fragile one. She needs surgery right away, and afterward, a long road of care, patience, and discipline. I'll do everything I can. The rest will depend on you." I looked through the glass into the small operating room. Alpha lay there, her fragile body wrapped in a thin blanket. She turned her head ever so slightly, as if she knew I was standing outside. Those clouded brown eyes sought mine again, not wild with terror as yesterday, but soft, weak, almost whispering. "Don't leave me." I blinked back tears, turned to the doctor, and said, "Please, do whatever it takes. She deserves to live. We'll be here. We'll care for her. Just give her a chance." He gave a small nod and signaled to the nurses to prepare the operating room. Only then did I realize my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't pull my wallet out. I fumbled for my credit card, slid it through the machine. The screen flashed red. Declined. My heart lurched. It was the end of the month, and my limit was nearly gone. The nurse looked at me with quiet sympathy, but I couldn't let Alpha wait. I pulled off my old watch, the only keepsake left from my father, and placed it on the counter. My voice cracked. "Take this. Consider it collateral. Please, just get her into surgery now." The nurse froze, then nodded quickly. The operating room door closed, the clanging hinge hitting me like a blade. I turned away, leaning hard against the hallway wall. My wife rested her head on my shoulder, whispering softly, "We've done the right thing. Alpha has us now." I closed my eyes, every sound inside the operating room searing into me. The footsteps of the surgeon, the clang of metal instruments, the sputter of a generator fighting the storm outside. I folded my arms, buried my face in them, and whispered so only I could hear, "Alpha, don't give up. Don't leave Daddy." The hallway of the veterinary hospital felt colder than I expected. Rain hammered the windows. The generator outside rumbled, as if reminding me how fragile everything was. I slumped into a plastic chair, my hands clenched so tightly my nails cut into my skin. My wife sat beside me in silence, lifting a tissue now and then to dab her tears. Through the small glass pane in the operating room door, I caught a glimpse of Alpha. Her tiny body lay on the cold steel table, wrapped in tubes and wires. The anesthesia mask covered most of her small face. I had never seen anything so fragile and yet so brave. A nurse pushed a tray of instruments, the clang of metal striking metal. My heart jumped. I heard "Doctor." Miller's voice carry through, calm but urgent. "Keep the pulse steady. We don't have much time." I buried my head in my hands, swallowing my sobs. I had waited outside operating rooms before. The day my wife gave birth to our first child. The day my mother had heart surgery. But never had my heart felt so breakable as in this moment, when the fate of one tiny life depended on every movement of the surgeon's hands. Time dragged painfully slow, a single minute stretched into forever. I listened to the steady beep of the heart monitor until suddenly it broke. Silence filled the air, like the whole world had stopped breathing. I leapt up, pressing my ear to the door, my chest pounding. "Please, God, don't take her." My wife gripped my hand, her voice trembling. "Have faith in them. They'll save her." A long, flat beep echoed, then cut off. My stomach dropped. The door flew open, a nurse rushing out, calling for another doctor. I grabbed her sleeve, desperate. "What's happening? How's Alpha?" She shook her head. "Critical. Please, just wait." The door closed again, leaving me to collapse back into the chair. It felt as though I had just lost something I hadn't even had the chance to hold on to. I looked at my wife, her eyes swollen red, but she pressed her hand to my chest and whispered, "Don't let go. Remember yesterday you told her, no one will hurt you again. Don't hurt her now by giving up." Her words cut through the despair consuming me. I buried my face in her hand, gasping, and prayed like a child. "God, I don't ask for anything for myself. I only ask that she lives. She has never known love. Please give her a chance." 10 minutes later, the steady beep returned. Relief crashed over me so hard my knees nearly gave way. When the door opened again, Doctor Miller stepped out. He peeled off his gloves, sweat beading on his forehead, but a faint smile tugged at his lips. "She pulled through. The fracture has been stabilized with a small plate. The infection has been cleaned. She's weak, but stable. The hardest part, she started breathing on her own after anesthesia." I broke. Tears streamed hot down my face. I had never cried so hard, not even when my father died. My wife buried her face against my shoulder, and we both shook, laughing and crying at the same time. The doctor rested his hand gently on my shoulder. "Now it's your turn. The recovery will be long. She'll need patience, discipline, and love. But from the way you held her yesterday, I believe Alpha has found the right person." I nodded, unable to speak. I turned instead to the small window. Alpha lay still, but her tiny chest rose and fell in steady rhythm. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I whispered, my voice thick with tears. "Alpha, you fought like a warrior. From now on, I promise, you'll never have to fight alone again." I brought Alpha home on a misty afternoon, wrapped in the small blanket my wife had prepared. Her body was still limp, shivering now and then as the anesthesia wore off. Her front leg was bound tight in white bandages, and the plastic cone around her neck made her look even smaller, even more fragile. Dr. Miller had repeated the warning again and again. For at least 1 month, no walking, no running, no jumping, and absolutely no licking the stitches. This will be the hardest time. If you break discipline, everything we did in surgery will be lost. His words echoed in my head. I knew Alpha was a lively breed, born to run, not to lie still. But I had no choice. I had made her a promise, and now I had to keep it. The first day home, Alpha hardly ate. I sat beside her all morning, spoon-feeding drops of thin porridge. She only licked a little, then turned her head away. I kept whispering patiently, "You have to eat, Alpha. You need strength to grow, to run, to live." At last, after much coaxing, she swallowed a few more spoonfuls. I smiled, a small smile, but it felt like a stone had been lifted off my chest. My wife, sitting behind me, laid her hand on my shoulder. "See? She'll try. She's chosen life." When night came, I spread a small mattress right beside my bed. I couldn't bear to leave Alpha alone. She curled up tight, eyes wide open in the dark, chest rising and falling so delicately. I reached out, close to the edge of her plastic cone, and whispered, "Sleep now, little one. Daddy's right here. No one will ever hurt you again." And then, so gently, she stretched her tiny muzzle to touch my finger, as if to make sure my words were true. That was all it took to make my throat close up. On the third day, I began cleaning her wound. Alpha cried out when the saline touched raw flesh. I held her firmly but gently, my voice steady. "It's all right. Just a little more, and it will ease. Trust me." At first she fought, eyes frantic. But as I repeated the ritual day after day, something shifted. She no longer looked at me as a stranger, but as a shelter. Each time I bent down, she lifted her gaze, hesitant, yet warmer. My wife said softly, "I think she's starting to trust you." I gave a weary smile and answered, "It isn't her she trusts. It's love, and that's something she's never known before." A week passed. Alpha ate more. Her eyes grew brighter, but her legs still dragged. Sometimes she tried to stand, only to collapse. Each time she whimpered and it tore through me. But instead of giving up, she always tried again and again. One night, I couldn't sleep. I sat watching her inch across the wooden floor, the plastic cone clattering as she wobbled to balance. She fell over and over, yet still pushed herself up, until exhaustion finally dropped her to the ground. I bent close, stroking her. "Sweet girl, I understand. You were born to run. That day will come. But not today. Today, just trying is enough." One morning, I stepped onto the porch and found Alpha stretched in the sunlight. Golden light poured over her sleek black coat. She lifted her head to look at me, and for the first time her brown eyes carried no fear. Instead, there was a spark, small but clear, like the first flame rising from ashes. And I realized these days were not only Alpha's time to heal, they were my time to learn how to trust again, to trust patience, to trust small things, and above all, to trust that no matter how deep the wound, love could mend it. 2 months had passed since Alpha's life-or-death surgery. I had counted every sleepless night, every bandage change, every tear shed at the sound of her whimper. And then, one morning, the miracle began to show itself. I was sitting on the porch, sipping bitter coffee. Early summer sunlight spilled into the yard, golden as honey. Alpha lay just a few steps away, the plastic cone long gone, her short, sleek coat hugging her small frame. She pressed her front paws to the ground and tried to move. I held my breath. One step, then another. She limped, but she didn't fall. For the first time in weeks, I saw Alpha standing strong on her own legs. I set my cup down, my heart racing. "Good girl. Keep going. I'm watching you." Slowly, she made her way toward me, every step a battle.
When she finally reached the porch, she lifted her head, her brown eyes blazing in the sunlight. I bent down, arms open. Alpha collapsed into my chest, panting hard but proud. Tears streamed down my face, soaking into her glossy black fur. That afternoon, we took Alpha back to the clinic for her follow-up. Dr. Miller carefully removed the last bandages. He examined each joint, frowning at first, then suddenly bursting into laughter, his voice filled with relief. "I can't believe this." The bone has healed better than I expected. Still a limp, yes, but the deformity is corrected. Alpha will walk normally. A small plate will stay with her for life, but that's a small price for freedom. My wife broke down, clinging to me. My own vision blurred. Alpha licked my hand gently, as if she too understood she had crossed a threshold. In the days that followed, Alpha began practicing short runs in the backyard. At first, only a few steps, then more, then faster. But the moment none of us will ever forget happened on a sunlit afternoon. My wife and I sat on the wooden bench, watching her wander lazily across the grass. Suddenly, Alpha stopped, lowered her body, gathering strength. Before I could grasp what she was about to do, she leapt. A small jump, just a few inches off the ground, but enough to leave us speechless. My wife covered her face, her voice breaking. "Oh my God, she can jump!" I shot to my feet, shouting like a child, "Alpha!" "You did it." She landed, wobbled, but didn't fall. Her tail wagged wildly, her eyes ablaze with light. I ran to her, dropping to my knees, tears spilling unchecked. "Sweet girl," I promised, "and now you've shown us all. Nothing can hold you back anymore." That little leap was small, but for us, it was nothing short of a miracle. It proved not only that Alpha could live a normal life, it reminded me that no wound is the end if you still have faith. That night, as Alpha slept soundly by the fire, I sat with my old notebook. My handwriting shook, uneven, but my heart was calm. Today, Alpha jumped. Just a small leap, but it carried all the hope in the world. And maybe she has taught me that in every life, there will come a day when we rise off the ground, even with scars still there. I closed the notebook and looked at her curled in her blanket. The scar on her leg would remain, but it was no longer a mark of pain. It was proof of victory. And I knew this was only the beginning. That summer in Portland was unusually beautiful. Sunlight stretched across maple-lined streets, and the air carried the faint scent of pine resin and freshly cut grass. I had never seen summer look so bright, perhaps because, for the first time, I was seeing the world through Alpha's eyes. Just weeks after her first leap, Alpha no longer dragged herself across the grass. She ran, though with a slight limp. But each time the wind brushed past, her little floppy ears bounced, and her tail wagged nonstop. My wife and I sat watching, as though we were witnessing a child learning to live all over again. "Look at her," my wife whispered, tears shining in her smile. "She's rewriting her life." We began taking Alpha farther. The first trip was to the lake in Forest Park. The water was cool and blue, the surface mirroring the sky like a giant glass. I unhooked her leash, letting her decide. At first, she hesitated, her front paw stirring ripples at the edge. Then suddenly she plunged in. The water rushed over the scar on her leg, but Alpha didn't yelp, didn't whimper. She swam, slow, clumsy, but determined. I stood frozen, my heart swelling. My wife clutched my arm, sobbing, "Do you see? She's not just alive, she's living." From that day, the lake became Alpha's best therapy. Each time she swam, it felt as though the old wounds melted away, leaving only strength. And for me, every stroke she took was a reminder. Never underestimate the will to live. We even took Alpha camping. At the edge of southern Oregon's forests,
Beneath towering pines, she ran in circles, nose pressed to every scent, her eyes glowing like embers. At night, while I built a fire, Alpha curled at my side, lifting her face to the stars. I stroked her head and whispered, "You know, it's been a long time since I felt like I still had a place in this world." Alpha nestled into my chest, her steady breathing like a lullaby. Firelight flickered in her brown eyes, and I knew she was family now, not just a dog who had been rescued. Even Dr. Miller was astonished at her next checkup. He watched Alpha trot around the room, then sighed and laughed with joy. "I can't believe it." With an injury like hers, most puppies would be crippled for life. But this one, she didn't just recover, she triumphed. I looked at Alpha, wagging eagerly at a nurse's shoes, pride swelling in my chest. The scar on her leg remained, forever. But to me, that scar wasn't a flaw. It was a badge of a warrior. One day, as I walked Alpha through the neighborhood, a boy stopped his bike, staring wide-eyed. "Mister, your dog limps. Does it hurt her?" I knelt, patted Alpha's head, and smiled at him. "She used to hurt, son. But not anymore. That limp only reminds us she fought and survived." The boy nodded, his face suddenly thoughtful, as though he'd understood something far bigger. I tightened the leash, warmth rising in my chest. Alpha hadn't just changed my life. She was changing the way strangers saw the world. That night, sitting by the window, watching the city lights glow, I thought of it all. I was old now. Most of my life was behind me. But Alpha, hers was only beginning. She reminded me it is never too late to find a reason to live. I turned to my wife, my voice breaking. "My love, we saved her from her chains, but she's the one who unlocked mine." She gripped my hand tightly. Alpha slept at our feet, her breathing steady, sweet as a song. And for the first time in years, I felt true peace in my soul. Autumn returned to Portland, the maples blazing red covering the narrow road that led to the river. Alpha was grown now, her black coat gleaming under the sun, her legs, once her burden, now carrying her swiftly, with only the faintest limp when she tired. Each time I watched her run free, my heart trembled like a child learning to laugh again after loss. That afternoon, we brought Alpha back to the lake where she had once swum her clumsy first strokes. The sky was clear, the wind cool, the water glittering like glass. I unhooked her leash. Alpha looked at me, her deep brown eyes asking, "Daddy, can I go farther?" I smiled, nodded, and then she dove in, slicing the water with all the life she had reclaimed. My wife stood beside me, tears quietly falling. She squeezed my hand and whispered, "Do you remember?" That first day, she couldn't even stand. And now, she lives as though she never carried a wound. I nodded, my throat tight. Out in the distance, Alpha turned back to look at us, her little ears perked, her eyes shining as if she were smiling. In that moment, I saw myself in her. Someone who had seemed beaten by time and loneliness, reminded that there were still reasons to live, to love, to hope. Alpha was no longer just a rescued puppy. She was family. She was the new heartbeat inside the house that had once been silent. At her final checkup, Doctor. Miller stepped from the exam room, joy sparkling in his eyes. Alpha is strong now. She'll run, swim, explore, just like any other dog. The only thing that remains is her scar. But consider it a badge. I bent down and brushed my hand gently over that scar. Alpha didn't pull away. She only licked my hand. I whispered, "Sweet girl, This scar doesn't make you weak. It proves you won.
That evening, we sat by the fireplace. Alpha curled at my feet, her chest rising and falling steadily. I said softly to my wife, "You know, she's the one who saved me." She reminded me that I could still love, still protect someone. I thought my days were nothing but emptiness, but Alpha opened another door. My wife smiled, eyes brimming. Maybe God sent her, not just for you to save her, but for her to save you. I nodded. In the firelight, I saw Alpha glance up, her brown eyes glowing. She didn't need words. I understood. She had forgiven the world that once abandoned her, and she had chosen to trust us. When I put pen to the last page of my old notebook, tears blurred the lines. Today, Alpha proved that no life is too broken to be redeemed. No wound is too deep for love to reach. And no soul, however small, is unworthy of being cherished. I looked at her sleeping soundly, her legs twitching lightly as if she were dreaming of running across green fields. I touched her back and made my vow. You will never be abandoned again. From now on, you will know only love, the open sky, and soft grass beneath your feet. Dear friends, I saved a life, but truly, she saved me from the shadows of old age, and I believe many of you have stretched out your hands the same way. I looked at Alpha, curled in her blanket, breathing steady, her once broken leg twitching as she dreamed of running. And in that moment, I understood something simple yet profound. We don't just save them. They save the human part of us too. Have you ever saved a dog's life? Have you ever heard a faint whimper in the dark, reached down and lifted a trembling soul out of the shadows? If you have, please share your story. Let those memories become a fire that warms this community. Because all it takes is one hand reaching out, one heart willing to believe, and no dog will be left behind. No eyes will stare at the world in loneliness. And maybe, the moment you save a small life is the moment your own heart is saved too.